Hello and good morning. I welcome you all back to Baiju's Exam Prep IAS. I hope all of you are doing good. This is class number 6 of governance. We are a few minutes late due to some technical issue at our end. Don't worry, we are just trying to resolve this issue. Give me a few more minutes. We'll just resolve this. We'll begin the class at 6:10 a.m. We'll begin the class at 6:10 a.m. Be here. Don't go anywhere. We're just resolving some issue here. Thank you so much. All right then. Once again, a very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. Slight delay because of a technical error that we were correcting in the BPT. Now we are back. I hope all of you are doing good. This is your class number 6 of governance. As you can see the topic on your screen today. Today we'll be discussing about the second Administrative Reforms Commission, also called as the second ARC. Now, ever since you would have started your preparation, you would have seen many people might have told you that second ARC is very important. You should read the second ARC this and that, etc., etc. So, second ARC is actually extremely important. What exactly is this? Let's try and explain this first. Since our independence, multiple governments have formed multiple committees and commissions in the past for various purposes. One of such commissions that was formed in the past was called the Administrative Reforms Commission. The idea of this commission was it had to suggest the government of India how to improve its administration. What are the key changes that they should introduce in the working of the government so that the administration becomes better? There have been two such commissions formed. First ARC and the second ARC. The first ARC was way back in 1960s. First ARC was in 1960s. Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, so that was very old. That is not relevant to us now. Second ARC, that is the second such commission, was formed in the year 2005. This commission was formed to suggest to the government what are the important changes that should be introduced in our governance, in our administration, to make it better for the people and for the country as a whole. Now, this particular ARC, that is the second ARC that we are talking about, gave a total of 15 reports. They gave a total of 15 reports. Now, if you try and read all of that, it would not be possible for you because 15 reports means thousands of pages together. So there is no point of reading thousands of pages. So what do we do usually? We try and see the most important points from all the reports. We try and see what are the important pointers on the reports and then we try and remember those. Remember, whatever second ARC said in its reports, these are suggestions for the government. Some of them have been implemented, while many of them have not been implemented so far. Many of them are still lying idle. They have not been implemented by the government because the government does not like it. No commission or committee can have binding recommendations on the government. Doesn't matter which committee it is, doesn't matter which commission it is, whatever they suggest to the government will never be binding on the government. It will all be in the form of a suggestion. Then the government would have to decide whether they want to accept the suggestion, whether they do not want to accept the suggestion. Now the question is, how is it relevant from the examination point of view? See, from the examination point of view in the UPSC mains questions, UPSC will not directly ask you what did the second ARC say. But it is important because UPSC in a lot of questions will ask for your suggestions for reforms. For example, the UPSC may ask you what are the new initiatives the government should introduce to tackle terrorism. UPSC may ask you, India faces a lot of issues regarding water. India is facing scarcity of water. What measures do you suggest to improve that situation? Or the question can be about disaster management, that natural disasters has become a common phenomena in India. What measures do you suggest to improve the situation? Whenever these kind of suggestions are asked, you can always write the suggestions given by the second ARC. That is when your answer becomes even better. And that is why these questions or reading about the second ARC is relevant. Again, I'm repeating, there is a very little chance that the UPSC will directly ask you what did the second ARC say in this and this matter. Rather, UPSC will ask you a normal question about suggestions on certain topics, and in the suggestions you have to write what the second ARC had suggested. Remember, we have already studied about the second ARC suggestions about the OSA, that is the Official Secrets Act. We have read about the second ARC suggestions on the Citizens Charter. Remember, I had told you how second ARC came up with the Sevottam model or the Sevottam framework. Second ARC suggested the changes that need to be made in the citizen starter. So the same kind of things. See, second ARC suggested multiple other areas as well. This is what we'll be discussing. So today's class of the second ARC is important because it will help you write the mains answers in a much better way. It will help you to ensure that you are able to give suggestions, proper suggestions in the form of what the second ARC had suggested. Before we begin, a quick reminder, the mains test series is beginning from the 30th of June. Do make sure you do not miss out on any of these tests. It will have a total of 10 tests. There will be 5 full-length tests and 5 other tests that will be sectional, available in both Hindi and English languages. There will be paper discussion at the end of the test. To get any more details, you can just log on to the BEP Byju's Exam Prep app and you can get all the details over there. Now, with that out of the way, and again, this is the entire timetable of the test series that you have here. This is how you can see the test. On your app, go to the home tab. Then from there, select the IAS English Hindi courses. Then view your course dashboard, syllabus, test series, and there you will see the mains test series 2024. That is how you will be able to see what the test series is about. Now, as I said, the second ARC was formed in the year 2005. These were the members. Chairman till 2009 was Virappa Moily. Virappa Moily was or is still a Congress member. Basically, he was a Congress minister during the UPA government. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, he was a minister. Very well-known leader from the Congress. Till 2009, because till 2009, he was not the minister. After that, he was made the minister, so he left this position. These are the people who were appointed in the second ARC. Now, as I told you, the second ARC gave a total of 15 reports, 1-5. These were the topic of the reports that they gave. First report that they gave was right to information. Second, unlocking human capital. Third report was on crisis management. Fourth, ethics and governance. 5, public law and order. 6, local governance. 7, capacity building for conflict resolution. 8, combating terrorism. 9, social capital. 10, refurbishing personal administration. 11, promoting e-governance. And 12, 13, 14, and 15. These are the 15 reports that the second ARC had given. Now, first question, are all these reports important? No, not all of these are important for you. Some of them are, and we will be discussing those. We will be discussing more than half of these today because not all of them are important, but some of them are. For example, I'll tell you, this is very important. Ethics and governance. They suggested how the governance in India can improve. Right to information also important, public law and order important, local governance also important, where they talked about panchayats, municipalities, how to improve them. Capacity building for conflict resolution also important. In this report, they talked about Naxalism and other types of issues that we are facing within the country, how to resolve those. Then we also have refurbishing personal administration. This is also important. In this report, they talked about how to improve the structure of the IAS, how to change the UPSC examination for better. Then e-governance also important. These are some of the important reports, and we'll be discussing most of these reports, starting with the first one. The first report that we'll be discussing is RTI. Since it was formed in 2005, that is the second ARC was formed in 2005, and the RTI law itself was passed in 2005. And when the law was passed back then in 2005, it was a big deal. Everyone thought it's a very important law. Everyone thought that a lot of things will change because of this law. That is why they gave one special report just on the concept of the RTI and how to improve the RTI. Now, as I said, whatever they suggested are the suggestions to the government. The government necessarily does not have to accept these suggestions. These are the suggestions that the second ARC has suggested. First suggestion that they gave was repeal the Official Secrets Act. If you have been attending governance classes from the beginning, you would remember In the very first class, the topic of RTI, when we were discussing that, we had discussed the Official Secrets Act, also called as a OSA. What is this act? This act allows the government to classify certain documents as secret documents. When the government says that these documents are secret documents, what it means is, now if anyone asks for information about those documents in the form of RTI, the government can straight away decline to give that information. The government can say, no, this is a secret document, we cannot give this information to you. So, Official Secrets Act, as we discussed earlier, has become a way for the government to misuse their power and to make sure that they can hide the information that they don't want to share. So, second ARC's first suggestion is repeal the OSA Official Secret Act. It does not really make any sense now. Second important recommendations on RTI itself. Spend 1% funds from the flagship government programs to update the records. Remember when we were discussing about RTI, we discussed that one big problem in the working of the RTI law is how the data and information is stored in the government offices. In most of the government offices, the records are still not kept online. They are stored in physical form in old files and papers, and that is why when someone files an RTI, even if the government department wants to give you the information, they can't find out the information because it is stored and hidden in some files. So the idea is that we should have a digitalized version of this information. All the information should be digitized. How to do that? Because we don't have any funds for that. See, digitalizing information, converting it into online form sounds good, but it all requires money. You need to pay people to do that. You need to have softwares that can do that. You need to have storage space to save that information. But the government of India has never given any funds for the RTI. There has not been any fund devolution for the RTI. So the suggestion here is government's flagship. Now, when you say flagship program, that means important programs of the government. For example, let's say Manrega. Or for example, let's say Ayushman Bharat scheme. So flagship program basically means the big schemes of the government. RTI or the second ARC says the budget given for these schemes, just take out 1% money from that and use it to digitalize the records. For example, if budget for Manrega is 80,000 crore rupees, from that at least 80 or 8,800 crore rupees should be separated, that is 1%, and it should be used to digitalize the government records. That is a suggestion. Now the problem here is, and obviously government has not accepted this. The problem here is when you talk about the big government schemes, even 1% money is a huge amount. As you can see here, if a government scheme has a budget of 80,000 crore rupees, even 1% of that would be 800 crore rupees. So does the government want to spend so much money just to digitalize the records? Not really. So the government has not done this so far. And because of this, because of the lack of funds, we still do not have 100% government information in the digital form. A lot of government files are still stored in physical, in copy paper form. Next suggestion, at least half of the information commissioner should be from non-civil services background. We have discussed this earlier as well when we were discussing the RTI. In order to have the RTI law functioning properly, we have a Central Information Commission. How many members are there in Central Information Commission, by the way? Let's see if you remember or not. How many members are there in the Central Information Commission? Means how many maximum members there can be. How many maximum members there can be? That's what my question is. Let's see. Okay, the correct answer is from Stephen, Mukera, Shreyank, Satyapal, Seema, Adnan, Shimna, Lakshmi, Bhuvnesh, Ayush. Okay, guys, now you're, I think, just Googling it. A lot of people, I think, have started to Google it. Okay, you can stop now. Kushi, Shan, Sayed are also correct. Rutuja also correct. Yes. So CIC, a lot of you are also wrong, is supposed to be one in chief information commissioner plus maximum of 10 information commissioners. That is the composition. Remember, one chief information commissioner plus maximum of 10 information commissioners. That was the composition. Those who are saying three, they are getting confused with CVC. Central Vigilance Commission was one chief vigilance commissioner officer and two vigilance commissioners. So don't be confused. Those who are saying eight, you are getting confused with Lokpal. Lokpal was the chairperson and eight other members. So again, don't be confused. We are talking about the Central Information Commission. The suggestion here is out of the members, at least half, at least 50% should be from non-civil services background. That is the suggestion, that we should have at least 50% from non-civil services background. That is what the second ARC has suggested. Tell me one more thing. In the CIC, the selection committee has which people as the members, or who are the members in the selection committee of CIC? Let's see if you remember or not. How many members and who are they? Who are the members in the selection committee of the CIC? Let's see. Tell me in one single line. Don't give me different comments, please. Okay, I'll just take the name if someone is correct. Okay, Anita is correct. Rajneesh correct. Dhara is correct. Swati is correct. Shreyank is correct. Sonia is also correct. Seema is also correct. Vanshika, Ayush. Okay, now you can stop, guys. You can stop now. Sayed is also correct. Purva. Okay, okay, okay. Some of you remember, a lot of you are getting confused. Khushi is also correct. Rutuja correct. Chandan correct. Okay, some of you remember, a lot of you are confused. Some of you are saying the Chief Justice of India is a member. No, Chief Justice of India is not a member. If you are thinking about Chief Justice of India, you are getting confused with CBI Director Appointment Committee. The CIC is supposed to have three members: Selection Committee, the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition of the Lok Sabha, and a Cabinet Minister of Prime Minister's choice. Third would be a Cabinet Minister decided by the Prime Minister. This is the selection committee. These are the three people who will tell a name to the President of India, and then the President of India will appoint them. Those who are thinking about the Home Minister, those who think that the third person is the Home Minister, that was a CVC. So in the CVC committee, there are three members: PM, Leader of Opposition, and the Home Minister. But in the CIC, the third person is a Cabinet Minister. It can be any Cabinet Minister or the Prime Minister's choice. It does not have to be the Home Minister. So do remember that. Anyway. So the suggestion here is at least half of the members of the CIC should be from non-civil service background. Right now, that is not the case. Right now, it is only the civil servants. The problem with the civil servants, as we discussed earlier, they are considered to be, or most of them rather, are considered to be partial towards the government, towards some political parties of their choice. That is why people, at least half of them, should come from non-civil services background. Clear provisions to include the NGOs. Remember when we were discussing about the RTI, it says that NGOs are included, but which NGOs? NGOs which are substantially financed. Remember this. The law says that NGOs that are substantially financed by the government are included in RTI. There is no definition of substantially financed. Whether 5 crores, 10 crores, 1 crore, 100 crore, what amount do you mean when you say substantially financed? That is not clear. That is again a suggestion. Independent authority should be made for grievance redressal. Now, what do you mean by this? When we were discussing about RTI, I had discussed this issue that the RTI law was passed mainly to give you information about the government's working, where the government is spending the money, government's projects, progress of certain projects, so on and so forth. That was the entire idea of the RTI. However, many people started to use the RTI to get their complaints resolved. That means for grievance redressal, they started making complaints. For example, let's say, and I gave you this example also, if you remember, that one of the first cases of RTI was when there was a lady in Ghaziabad, her scooty was stolen, so she filed an FIR with the police. Investigation was not going anywhere. So what she did was she filed an RTI to get information about the status of her FIR, and that is when the police started to work. So what has happened is a lot of people have started using the RTI for grievance redressal, for resolving their own complaints. That was never the purpose of the RTI. So the idea here is, let RTI only be used to give out information and not for people to resolve their individual issues. If the people have to resolve their individual issues like filing RTI to get to the status of their FIR, that should have a separate kind of provision. We should have separate authorities for that rather than just looking into how this actually works. That is also a suggestion given by the second ARC about the RTI. Next suggestion, cover legislature and judiciary under the RTI. Now, this has happened partially. If you remember, we have discussed the Office of Chief Justice of India is partially under the RTI now. Means the administrative work of the Chief Justice of India's office, the administrative work is under the RTI. You can ask questions. But legislature is still not under the RTI. Legislature means parliament or state legislatures. They are still not under the RTI. So you still cannot ask questions from the parliament or from the state legislatures. The suggestion here is that we should draw a roadmap. We should try and see how we can ensure that RTI also covers legislature, they also cover judiciary in the coming months. Except this, apart from this, non-confidential files should be made public under RTI. Now, what do you mean by this? In a lot of countries, I'll give you an example of the US. US has a law which says, if let's say today the government of America says that a file is top secret, it will not be shown to anyone. Just like we have the Official Secrets Act, America also, and every government has this law that their government can classify certain documents as confidential. In the US, the law is, if today the government says that a document is confidential, we will not show it to anyone. After 50 years are over, the files are automatically declassified. The files are automatically declassified after 50 years are over. So if today, for example, a file is called as confidential and the government says we will not give this information to anyone, after 50 years, automatically the file will be uploaded on the government website. Everyone can see this now. And that is how a lot of government information comes out. In India, that is not the case. In India, we still have files that are confidential, that are many, many, many years old. The government has to specifically give an order to make the files public rather than the files becoming public themselves. That is a suggestion, that files should not always be kept confidential. Maybe today something needs to be confidential, but maybe the same thing tomorrow or maybe same thing day after tomorrow can be disclosed to the public, and this is what we should do. Any files that are non-confidential should be uploaded on the government website itself. Remember, when we were discussing RTI, we discussed that the ideal scenario is that information should be disclosed suo motu. Ideal scenario is suo motu disclosure, means the departments by themselves should give out all the information. The departments in the government should not wait for someone to file an RTI and then give out the information. They should suo motu release as much information as they can. That is the idea. But that has not been happening. The suggestion is, any file that is non-confidential in nature should be released under the RTI by itself. This was the first report. So again, the first report was suggestions on the RTI. These were the main suggestions that the second ARC has given. Second report that we'll be discussing where suggestions have been given is unlocking human capital. When you say unlocking human capital, what you mean is how to improve the working of the government, how to make the government more efficient in the coming years. First, rationalize the size of the government. Now, please understand, this is extremely important for you to understand from answer writing point of view. When you write answers in the mains examination, please understand every single word matters. Which words do you use? Which words do you not use? All those words matter. For example, look at the first point here. The first point is not increase the size of the government. It is not decrease the size of the government. The first point is only rationalize the size of the government. That's it. Understand this. We have used the word rationalize. We have not used the word increase or decrease. Rationalize is a much safer word to use. Why? Rationalize means wherever there is a requirement of more people, increase the size of the government. Wherever the requirement is of lesser number of people, decrease the size of government. So when you say rationalize, what you mean to say is see whatever is the requirement and based on that requirement, try and change the size of the government. That is what you mean by rationalize. Now, this is an important skill for the mains answer writing as well. You have to choose your words very carefully. Rather than writing increase the size of the government or decrease the size of the government, because it will not apply to every department. Some departments need more people, some departments need lesser number of people. So you use a word such as rationalize, means wherever required, you can increase or decrease the size. So a suggestion is, if there are government departments which are overstaffed means when lot lesser people are required as compared to what there are, then understaff the people, means remove some people. I'll give you an example. Recently, as you know, Air India, which was a government entity, was sold to the Tatas. Now, when Air India was with the government of India, Air India did not really have a good financial understanding or good financial existence. Air India was going into a lot of losses. One of the reasons why Air India was going into a lot of losses was because of the staff that they had. Means they had much more staff as compared to what was required. Now, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'll give you a lump sum figure. Lump sum figure, if you talk about any airlines, how the airlines measure their staff is staff per aircraft. Means how many aircraft the airline runs, and on the base of that, how many people do they employ. So I again I'm not saying I know the exact numbers, but lump sum a few years back, the ratio was Indigo, which is India's most profitable airlines, had about, let's say, 160 or 170 people per aircraft. So if they had, let's say, 100 aircraft, they had 17,000 employees. For Air India, the ratio was about 350 people. They had about 350 people per aircraft. So Air India had twice or almost double the number of people that Indigo had, and they were running the same number of aircraft, and that is why they were going into so many losses, because then they had to arrange for their salaries and other benefits. So what happened as a result was there was a lot of demand that people should be let go, people should be removed. But again, when you say you have a government job, Air India was a government job. Now it's not, but when Air India was a government entity, it was a government job. So, as you know, you are not removed from the government job. The government does not just remove you. And that was a big problem. That Air India was overstaffed. Although it was going into losses, the government could not remove anyone. So the idea is to rationalize the size of the government, different government departments. Wherever more people are needed, have more people. Wherever lesser number of people are needed, have lesser number of people. But rationalize this according to your requirement. Second, recast the allocation of business rules. Now, what do you mean by this? In Indian polity, you read about the President of India. Amongst the powers of the President, executive powers, one of the powers of the President is the President decides the rules of business allocation for the government. Remember, it is a power of the President. The President decides on business allocation rules of the government of India. Now, when you say business allocation rules, what do you mean by this? So basically, these rules mean how will the government work? For example, let's assume that someone has applied for a license, and I gave this example earlier as well. Let's assume someone has applied for a license. If you want to, let's open up a factory. In order to open up a factory, you need permission from a lot of government departments. You need permission from labor department, you need permission from environment ministry, you need permission from different types of ministry, commerce ministry, etc. And only then you can open up your factory. Now, how will these permissions be given? How the file will go from one department, then to the second department, then to a third department? In how many days the files will be transferred? All of that come under the allocation of business rules. So, business rules in simple terms means how the business will be transacted, how the business will be conducted. That is what is meant by business rules. How the files will be transferred, how the communication will happen from one department to the other department. That is how it works. So the suggestion is we should ensure that these rules are much, much more efficient. These rules are focused on bringing into play the strengths of the government, trying to cut short the timeline of important processes rather than just focusing on the rules. These are some of the things which are, let's say, an ongoing process. These are not the processes which are done in one single day. These are all ongoing processes that will happen every single day. Okay. Stephen is saying in Lakshmikant, it is given speaker looks after the business rules. Stephen, read it properly. Read it, or read the complete sentence. Speaker looks after rules of conduct of the Lok Sabha business or business within the parliament. We are not talking about the parliament, we're talking about the government. The speaker does not have any role in the government allocation of business. The speaker looks into the role of how the parliament works or how the Lok Sabha works. When you talk about the government and its working, that is the president. So that is the difference between the two. Apart from that, another suggestion is to simplify the government processes. It's a very generic kind of a suggestion. The government processes of applying for things, applying for permission, license, it's a complex process. You need to simplify that. Overlapping jurisdiction of the agencies needs to be checked. Now, what do you mean by this? I'll give you a suggestion, or I'll give you rather an example. There are multiple ministries that do a similar kind of a work. Let's see this. So we have a tribal affairs ministry. We have a Panchayati Raj ministry. We have a Ministry of Rural Development. Now, just imagine this. We have these three ministries. Now, imagine if a government of India decide that they want to implement a scheme in India's rural areas. Let's say there's a big scheme that the government is trying to implement in villages of India. Now, if that village has tribal population also, all these three ministries will be fighting that we want to implement the scheme, we want to implement the scheme. Panchayat Raj Ministry will say we want to implement the scheme because we look after the panchayats. Rural Development Ministry will say we want to implement the scheme. Tribal Affairs Ministry says because tribal population lives in that village, so we want to now implement that scheme. So the problem here is when you have these agencies, when you have multiple agencies or ministries with overlapping jurisdiction, it becomes quite confusing. It becomes problematic to decide who will take up what. Now, every ministry obviously wants a scheme. Why? Why would every minister want to implement a scheme? Because schemes means big budget. Why every minister, every ministry wants to implement the government schemes? The reason is that these schemes, they are given a huge budget by the government of India, and that presents an opportunity for them to siphon off funds legally or illegally. And that is why, whenever we have multiple ministries, multiple agencies doing a similar kind of a work, we have this issue that no one is actually doing their job properly. Rather, it's a lot of overlapping, and you have to go from one ministry to the other ministry just to get all the permissions sorted. That was the second report. The third important report, the third important report that we'll be discussing is ethics in governance. Now, ethics in governance is a report that talked about how to change the governance structure in India, how to improve the working of the government, how to make it much more efficient. They have given many suggestions. Not many of them have been accepted. The government has not been open to these changes, but they have suggested some very interesting things. For example, the first suggestion they gave was have partial state funding of elections. In Indian polity, we read about the election process in India. Fighting elections is an extremely expensive exercise. Fighting of elections requires crores of rupee to be spent. Why? Because you need to go and advertise yourself, you need to have rallies, you need to have a supporter base, you need to reach out to the people. It all requires huge amount of money. The problem with that is when you have an election exercise which requires so much money, that means anyone who does not have this much money, anyone who is not that rich, will never have a fair chance of winning in the elections. So if we do not have proper, let's say, funding, or we do not have a situation where a person has enough money or a person has enough fund, they will never be able to fight the elections. Doesn't matter how good you are. Just imagine this. Let's say there is a candidate who is very well educated, who has a lot of knowledge, who wants to help the people, who is very, very, very honest. But even then, people will never come to know about him. So, how will they vote for him? In order for people to vote for you, you have to tell the people that you exist. You have to advertise yourself. All that requires money. So the suggestion of elections or how to improve the elections is have state funding of elections. State funding of election basically means rather than individuals spending money from their own pocket, whoever wants to fight the election, the government should give them the money, or not money but support whatever is required. For example, if you want to hold rallies, government should give you the venue. If you want to travel, the government should give you the car. So that is called state funding of elections. In a lot of countries around the world, we do have state funding of elections. State funding election means again the government will provide you resources to fight the election. Why is it important? It's important because it creates an even playing field. It allows you to at least have a situation where you can compete against others even if you do not have enough money to do that. The idea here is not to have complete funding by the government, because if you have complete funding by the government, that will put a lot of financial pressure on the government. So rather than having complete state funding, at least have partial state funding of elections. That is something that they have suggested. In this regard, state funding of elections, there are many committees also that have been formed. For example, if you get time, read about the Indrajit Gupta committee. The Indrajit Gupta committee was established on a similar topic about state funding of elections. The next suggestion that they gave was at the second ARC to tighten the anti-defection law, let the president or the governor decide on the question of disqualification. You would have read Indian polity. In Indian polity, we read about the anti-defection law. Just in case you don't know what is anti-defection law, you're not read it, I'll give you a very short version of it. The short version of anti-defection law is if you are a member of parliament and you resign from your party, you switch your party, you join some other party. Let's say you are right now a Congress member of the parliament, and the Congress member of parliament left the Congress, resigned from the Congress, and joined the BJP. Under the anti-defection law, you shall be disqualified from the parliament. That is called the anti-defection law. Changing of sides is not allowed. But the problem here is decision on the disqualification of anti-defection law is taken by the presiding officer of the house. Means in case of Lok Sabha, the decision will be taken by the Lok Sabha speaker. In case of Rajya Sabha, the decision is taken by the Rajya Sabha chairperson. That is how the decision is taken. Now, that creates a problem. Let's try and understand how. Think of it as this. What are the chances if a member of parliament today wants to switch his or her party? What are the chances? Would someone go towards the winning side or would someone go towards the losing side? Just imagine if you are a member of parliament, you want to switch your party. Would you want to go towards someone who is in power or would you want to come out of who is in power? Obviously, you want to go towards someone who is in power. That is the entire point of switching the side, right? So the situation is, or the probability is, that someone from the Congress would want to go to the BJP, right? Because they are in the power right now. Now imagine this. Let's say a member of parliament, member of Congress, left the Congress, joined the BJP. Ideally, he should be disqualified because of the anti-defection law. But the decision will be taken by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Now, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha belongs to which party? The decision is to be taken by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha Speaker is from which party? The Lok Sabha Speaker will obviously be from the ruling party only. So, Speaker belongs to the BJP only, or the ruling party. Now, obviously, the Speaker is supposed to be independent. The Speaker is supposed to not have any side, but the reality is the Speaker would not want to disqualify anyone who came to his party, right? That is the entire problem. Why would the Speaker want to disqualify a member of parliament who came and joined his party and strengthened his party? That is the conflict here. It has happened multiple times in many states also. A few years ago in Manipur, many members of the opposition resigned from the opposition, joined the government. They were not disqualified by the Speaker. In fact, the Speaker did not do anything and they were even made ministers in the government. The matter went to the Supreme Court of India. The loophole here is anti-defection law does not have any time limit that within this much time you have to disqualify the member. And that is a big loophole. The speakers usually say that we are deciding on this matter. We are still thinking. Because there is no time limit, they keep on saying, oh, we are still thinking about it. We are still thinking about it. That becomes a problem. And this is where the Supreme Court had also said that although there is no time limit, we should take a decision in specific amount within a fair amount of time. That is why the suggestion is that let the president or the governor decide on these issues. Now, I know many of you would say, how do you expect the president or the governor to be independent? Right? Many of you would say the president or the governor, even they are not independent, which is true. Which is true. But again, at least governor or the president don't belong to any political party officially. If you have to see a brighter side, the only brighter side is at least they don't belong to any political party officially. Number one. Second thing that you have to understand here is, yes, the president is bound by the advice of the Council of Ministers. Whatever the Council of Ministers say, president has to accept that. But in the matters of disqualification of the members of parliament, when the president has to disqualify a member of the parliament, in that matter, the president listens to the advice of the Election Commission and not the government. Please remember this. Because apart from anti-defection law, there are other reasons also under which the members of parliament are disqualified. For example, if they have lost their citizenship, if they have been given a jail term for more than 2 years. There are a lot of other ways in which the members of parliament can be disqualified. For those reasons, the president only decides. It is the president's order that disqualifies them. When the president has to disqualify a member of parliament, he is not bound by the advice of council of ministers. For that, he listens to the advice of the Election Commission of India. So the same can happen here as well. Let the governor or the president decide, obviously not from their own mind, but on the advice of the Election Commission of India. But again, this is just a suggestion. Why? See, these things will remain suggestions because of very common sense reason. Why would any government want to give away its power? Right now, if the speaker is deciding on the disqualification, it is a power of the ruling party, right? That it is their speaker will decide, so they can control the situation better. How can you expect the ruling party or any government to give away that power? How do you expect them to say, oh, let the president decide, a speaker will not decide? So that is why these suggestions are mostly on paper rather than actually being accepted. Next suggestion, amend the disqualification criteria for MPs and MLAs. For example, there are a lot of ways in which MPs and MLAs can be disqualified. One of the ways is that if you get jail for 2 years or more, you will be disqualified. Now, this has been accepted partially, but through the Supreme Court. How? Let's try and understand this. Have you heard about the famous Lily Thomas case of 2003? Sorry, 2013, not 3. Have you heard of this case? Okay. So those who have, great. Those who have not heard of it, let me tell you what the case was. So basically, understand this. The original law, was that if a member of parliament gets 2 years or more in jail, if member of parliament gets 2 years or more in jail, he will not be disqualified immediately. He will not be disqualified. What will happen? He will get time to file an appeal. He can file an appeal in the higher court. Only after all the appeals have been exhausted, only after High Court, Supreme Court, all of this is done, only after all the appeals will the member of the parliament be disqualified. And you also know, going to Supreme Court, High Courts, going time and time again, it can take many, many, many years. It can take many years. So basically, even if you have been given a jail term of 2 years or more, you are not really disqualified, because you could just keep on delaying it by saying, oh, I filed an appeal, the matter is still being decided, so on and so forth. What happened in 2013 was, there was a case called the Lily Thomas case. By the way, you might hear Lily Thomas case in many different cases as well. Lily Thomas was a very famous Supreme Court lawyer, and she had filed multiple cases regarding different topics. So this is not the only Lily Thomas case. The name Lily Thomas case is attached to many other Supreme Court cases as well. So don't be confused if you see other cases by the same name, because Lily Thomas was a Supreme Court lawyer who used to file many of these important cases. So in 2013, Supreme Court said that no, this is wrong. In 2013, the Supreme Court said, if MP gets 2 years or more in jail, he will be immediately disqualified. He will be immediately disqualified. After disqualification, you can file for appeal wherever you want. There's no stopping you. You can go to whatever court that you want. But if you get 2 years or more in jail, you will be immediately disqualified. There are many, many, many examples of that. For example, what happened in the last Lok Sabha with Rahul Gandhi? In the last Lok Sabha, that is what happened with Rahul Gandhi. In the past, it has happened with Lalu Prasad Yadav. It has happened with Jayalalitha as well, late Jayalalitha, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. That happened with her also. So a lot of these people were disqualified immediately as soon as they were given 2 years or more in jail. So this is what the ARC had suggested. ARC had said that the disqualification criteria for the members of parliament should be disqualified. This was accepted, but again, not accepted by the government. It was done by the judiciary. So this was done, but by the Supreme Court and not by the government of India. Second, ARC also suggested false election declarations should lead to disqualification. When you file any election, while fighting election, you have to declare a lot of your personal details. Educational qualification, how many cases do you have pending against you? Have you ever been to a jail or not? Where do you live? How much money do you have? How many loans do you have? A lot of that information has to be given. Many times it is seen that the information turns out to be false. Election Commission of India has the power to take action, but they usually do not. To take it seriously, the suggestion is that any false information should lead to disqualification. I'll give you an example. In 2019, when Smriti Irani was fighting the election, rather in 2014, sorry, when Smriti Irani was fighting the election, she had given a declaration, and the declaration that she had given, basically, in the education column, she had written that I have a degree from Yale University in US. So Smriti Irani had said that I have a Yale University degree in the US. It was later found out that she does not have any Yale University degree. What she had done was, remember, there are many schools and colleges these days, colleges and universities these days, that offer online courses for 1 week or 10 days, and they give you a certificate in return for that. You would have all seen that. For example, there are Harvard courses, 1 week of course on Harvard University. They will do an online course with you. You have to pay the money, and then they'll give you the certificate that you did this course with us. So there are many such universities that now offer online courses, short-term courses. So what she did was she attended a 3-day course. It was just a 3-day course of the Yale University. And then she wrote in the election declaration that she had a university degree from Yale. Now that became a problem. So that was a case of false declaration. It was a false election declaration, but nothing really happened to her. No action was taken as such. That is a suggestion that the second ARC suggested, that any false declaration should be taken very seriously. Anything wrong or anything false that is given should lead to the disqualification of the member of the parliament. Second ARC also suggested that anyone in governance should follow the 7 Nolan principles of public life. Remember, we discussed about this. Remember the 7 Nolan principles? We discussed about this just the other day. The same was suggested by the second ARC. I told this in the earlier class as well. These principles were suggested by the second ARC. Second ARC said that anyone in public life, the ministers specifically, not just the bureaucrats, the ministers also should follow all these values, and we have discussed about this earlier as well. Values of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Do remember this? These are the 7 Nolan principles of public life. We discussed about this earlier as well. It was a part of the Nolan Committee in 1994. In 1994, Nolan Committee was formed in the British Parliament, and that is what they had suggested. Apart from that, some other suggestions that were given was to make changes in the appointment process of CAG and the Chief Election Commissioner. This has happened now. This has happened, but because of the Supreme Court and not because of the government. See, at the time when the second ARC was giving its reports, CAG, that is a comptroller and the Auditor General, and the Chief Election Commissioner, for both of them, there was no appointment committee. Even today, for CAG, we don't have any appointment committee. We discussed about this a couple of days back. For the CAG, even today, the President of India appoints a CAG, and the name is given by the government. The Prime Minister will give a name to the President. The President will appoint the same person as the CAG. There is no appointment committee attached to that. Similarly, with the Chief Election Commissioner, also, there was no appointment committee that was involved. A name was given to the President. The President would appoint the same person as the Election Commissioner. The idea and the suggestion here by the second ARC is that both of these are such important positions. Both of these are important for India's democracy. Both of these are important for India's proper governance. That is why, for their appointment method, there should be an election committee. There should be an appointment committee. There has to be a role of the opposition as well. There has to be some representation from the opposition. There has to be representation maybe from the judiciary as well. For CAG, it has not happened so far. For CAG, it is still the same. The government just gives a name to the President of India. The same person is appointed then. For the Election Commission, yes, it has changed. As you know, for the Election Commission, the Supreme Court had intervened. For the Election Commission, the Supreme Court had intervened. They had made a committee. They had said that for Election Commission, the appointment should be done or selection should be done by President on recommendation of a three-member committee. They had suggested the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. That is what the Supreme Court had said. The government then changed it. Government said, no, 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 no. We will not have Chief Justice of India. Government said we will have Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and a Cabinet Minister of the Prime Minister's choice. But at least we have a committee now for the Election Commission. For the CAG appointment, we still do not have any committee. For the CAG appointment, we still follow the same process where a suggestion is given to the President of India by the Prime Minister, by the Council of Ministers, and that is just accepted by the President of India without any role given to the opposition, to the judiciary as well. Apart from that, other suggestions also include publication, auditing of the accounts of political parties. Now, this again happened because of Supreme Court intervention in electoral bond case. The idea is political parties for their working require crores and crores of money. Running a political party is not easy. You have to give so many ads. You see all these huge ads in the newspapers that we are wishing our leader 100th birthday, we are wishing our leader on our 100th death anniversary, so on and so forth. All these full page ads in the newspapers that you see, these are extremely, extremely expensive ads. These are not cheap ads. And to give all these ads, you require a lot of money to be spent. How will that money be spent and how will that money be arranged? The political parties get money from corporates, they get a lot of money from these companies. However, the common man, common people like you and me, we don't even get to know the political party and the sources that they have, sources of money. This is the problem here. If I am going to vote for a political party, if I am going there and voting for the political party, I need to know, I need to have information from where are they getting the money. If I know that they're getting the money from a specific place, only and only then I would be able to see if I can vote for them or not. So the second ARC suggested that they should publish their records of where they are getting the money from, but no political party wants to do that. No political party wants to tell you from where did they get the money. Recently, the Supreme Court forced the Election Commission to give out the data of electoral bonds. That is how the data was released, but the political parties themselves have not released any of their records. Another suggestion: post poll coalition should not be allowed without re elections. Post poll coalition should not be allowed without re election. Now, this is important. Please understand what is meant by this. Let's take a real example of what happened in Maharashtra. In the last state elections of Maharashtra, there were two sides. One side was BJP plus Shiv Sena. They were fighting on one side. Other side was a Congress plus the NCP. These are the two sides fighting the elections. Now, what happened was, let's say BJP Shiv Sena were fighting together. Now, Maharashtra has a total of 288 seats. Because they were fighting together, let's assume, now these are not exact numbers, but let's assume that Shiv Sena was fighting on 100 seats, BJP on 188 seats. On these 100 seats, where Shiv Sena was fighting the election, the BJP said that on these 100 seats, whoever is a BJP supporter should vote for Shiv Sena only. The BJP said on these 100 seats, whoever wants to support the BJP should vote for Shiv Sena because we are the same. Now, what happened when the elections got over? When the results were declared, Shiv Sena switched over to this side. After the elections, what happened was BJP remained on one side and the other side became Congress plus NCP plus the Shiv Sena. This became the other side. Now, that is how they formed the government. That is how they formed the government. Now, what is the problem here? The problem here is you change your side or you made a new coalition after the election result was over. So, what is the problem here? The problem here is, think about these voters in these seats. The voters on these seats who wanted the BJP to win, they gave vote to Shiv Sena because they did not want this side to win, right? If a person voted for Shiv Sena, means they voted because they wanted the Shiv Sena to form the government along with the BJP and not along with the Congress and the NCP. That is why if you have a situation where the political parties form new coalitions after the election result, that is called post-poll coalition. Post-poll coalitions are against the trust of the voter. In the post-poll coalition, you are trying to tell the voter that your vote does not matter. We will decide on our own. So the suggestion is that this should not be allowed. If Shiv Sena wants to switch sides, if Shiv Sena wants to come to this side, then there should be new elections with BJP on one side and these three on the other side. That is the suggestion. That we should rather have new elections first, only and only when they three together win the poll or win the election, only then they should be allowed to form the government. That is a suggestion, that no changing of sides should be allowed after the election results are over, because it leads to lack of trust in the minds of the common people, in the minds of the common voter. If they want to switch sides, there should be re-elections once again, and they should first once again prove that the people support this combination. That is a suggestion. Has it been accepted? Obviously not. Not accepted. Even today you can change whichever side you want. You can change your side whenever you want. Today you can be in one side, tomorrow you can be on the other side. There is no compulsion with that. Next suggestion, as we discussed, chief election commissioner should be changed, or the appointment procedure should change. This has been accepted, but again through the Supreme Court, not through the government, but through the Supreme Court. They first intervened and then it has been changed. They also want to reform the collegium system. You would have studied in Indian polity about the collegium system. Collegium system is a system of appointment of judges in the Supreme Court and the High Court. The problem with the collegium system is that the government has no role to play. It is judges appointing the next judges. That is an issue with the collegium system, where you have a situation where judges only decide who shall be the next judge rather than someone else taking a call. And that is something that needs to be changed, because there is a closed door meeting and there is no clarity and no suggestions about, or no transparency about what happens. Now, within this, that is, within this report, the second ARC also suggested code for the ministers. Someshri, when I say accepted by the Supreme Court and not by the government, what I mean to say is that this suggestion has been implemented now, but the government did not implement it. It was a Supreme Court through a case that implemented it. Like if you look at the appointment of the Election Commission, the process has changed now. It was not because the government changed it was because in a Supreme Court case last year, the Supreme Court was the one who changed it. Supreme Court was the one who said that we have to change the method of the Election Commission appointment. That is why I am writing here that it is accepted because of Supreme Court intervention and not because the government has accepted it. Now, second ARC also suggested a code for the ministers, means how the ministers should behave themselves rather than how the other members of parliament just usually behave. First, Lok Sabha ministers should keep their roles separate as ministers and constituency member. Now, what do you mean by this? It's a very common practice. When some member of parliament from Lok Sabha becomes a minister, they will make sure that most of the government schemes are targeted to their area, their constituency. I'll give you an example. It is very famously known that when Lalu Yadav became the railway minister, what happened was all the super fast trains, Rajdhani, Shatabdi, many super fast trains, were made to stop even in small villages in Bihar. Even in small villages, small railway station, the trains were made to stop there. Why? Because Lalu Yadav wanted to make his supporters happy. He wanted to make his voters happy. So what happened was, as a result of it, these super fast trains, Shatabdi, Rajdhani, they lost their importance because they were being stopped at too many places. And this is a very common occurrence. Whoever becomes a minister would want a lot of government schemes to be focused on their particular constituency. And this happens with everyone. For example, when you have, let's say you're a civil aviation minister, you decide airports, you decide flights, etc. So what do? Whenever you get any ministry, you first make sure that their schemes are implemented in your area. That is unfair. That is not fair. And that is why the suggestion is that the ministers should not act as a member from a particular constituency. Maybe when someone becomes a minister, their constituency should be handled by someone else. They should keep their role as a minister separate from that of a Lok Sabha member from a constituency. This is not practical, but again, this is a suggestion to avoid any bias. And there are many examples you would have seen in your state as well. Powerful politicians of your state, if they come from a specific small area, that area gets a lot more development. I'll give you an example. Look at Uttar Pradesh. In UP, Mulayam Singh Yadav, his son Akhilesh Yadav, they belonged to a area called Mainpuri. Now, Mainpuri in UP is a very, very, very small town. But because you see them coming from that particular area, you will see there is even a very small airport being built there so that the planes can land. There is much more development in that area as compared to the areas nearby. And that is again an example of some kind of a bias when powerful people come from one specific constituency. Now, one other thing that you have to understand, it is not an India only phenomena. Please understand this. It is not that it only happens in India. It happens in many other democracies as well. I'll give you an example. You would have all at least heard the name of Hambantota Port. Have you heard of this name? If yes, where exactly is it? Hambantota Port, where exactly is this? Sri Lanka, right. Right. So this Hambantota port in Sri Lanka remains in the news. Why does it remain in the news? As you know, the issue is it has been taken over by China. China controls this port. Now, what is the background story of this port? The background story of the port is very similar to what I'm telling you here. Hambantota is a very, very, very small town in Sri Lanka. Very small town. But Hambantota is a town of the powerful Rajapaksha family. Rajapaksa brothers who have been presidents and prime ministers in Sri Lanka, who hold very, very important posts, Rajapaksa brothers, they come from this small town of Hambantota. So when they were fighting elections, they told the people of Hambantota that vote for us, we will build a huge port here. Although it was not required for a country of the size of Sri Lanka, having one big port in Colombo was good enough. They did not require even any other port because Colombo was a big enough port, had a very large capacity, it was good enough. But just because they wanted to please their local supporters, just because they wanted to please their local constituency, they took huge loans from China to build the Hambantota port. And the result now is in front of everyone. So members supporting their constituency and being unfair to others, it's not a very uncommon practice. It is a very, very, very common practice in democracies. And the suggestion is ministers should not keep their constituency. This should be done in some other manner. That's a suggestion. Next suggestion, ministers should not use government resources for party political purposes. Understandable. If a minister goes to an important event, if a minister has to attend a party meeting, they should not use government resources. That should be kept separate. Ministers should uphold the political impartiality of civil services and not ask the civil servants to act in any way which would conflict with the duties and responsibilities of the civil servants. Understandable? Nothing that is confusing here. The civil servant should not be pressurized by the politicians. The politicians should allow them to work independently. These are the codes of conduct for the ministers. Means this is how the ministers should conduct themselves. Dedicated units should be set up in Prime Minister, Chief Minister office to receive complaints about other ministers. So if you have a complaint about the minister right now, you don't have many options. Yes, the Lokpal option is open. But again, Lokpal is mainly for anti-corruption issues. If you have a corruption case, then maybe you can file with the Lokpal. But if you have some other issues, that is the minister not working properly, the minister being biased towards certain religions, the minister being biased towards certain caste, the minister being biased towards the certain constituencies, those are not corruption cases. So you can't go to Lokpal for that. So what do? The suggestion is Prime Minister and the Chief Ministers should ensure that their office is open to receiving complaints against the minister. So the suggestion is that the common people who have any problem with the ministers should be allowed to file a complaint with the prime minister or the chief ministers. Prime Minister, Chief Minister should ensure that this code of conduct is followed by the ministers. And even in the coalition governments, doesn't matter which party the ministers belong to, the ministers should follow this code of conduct. Like right now, we have a coalition government now. So even in the coalition government, ministers come from different parties. Even then, all of them should follow the code of conduct, and that is something that the prime minister should look into at the central level, and the chief minister should look into at the state level, whatever be the case. Apart from this, second ARC also suggested on how to ensure separation of powers. Separation of powers is a concept that you would have read in Indian polity. Separation of powers simply means there are three arms of the government: legislator or legislative, executive, and judiciary. These three should work separately. Legislative means they are the ones who make the laws, executives are the ones who implement the laws, and judiciary is the one who decides whether the law is being followed or not. These three are three separate arms and they work independently, they have their own separation of powers. However, the separation of power concept is not that easy to implement, especially in a country like India, because we have a parliamentary form of government. In India, because we have a parliamentary form of government, what it means is ministers are those people who are members of parliament only. That is why there is slight confusion in this concept of separation of power. So, suggestion is number one, all offices that involve executive decision making, control of funds, etc., should be treated as office of profit. Let's understand this concept first. You might have read about office of profit in Indian polity. What do you mean by this? See, the idea is simple. Office of profit means if you are a legislator, legislator means member of parliament, MLA or MLC. If you are a legislator, you are a MP, MLA, etc., at the same time, you cannot hold an executive position. If you hold an executive position along with being a legislator, then it becomes an office of profit. Then it becomes an office of profit. Office of profit would basically mean that if you are a legislator, you can't be an executive along with that. Now, there are always some exceptions. For example, you can be a minister. You can be a minister, that is fine. But for example, let's say you are a MP or MLA. Along with that, the government says that you will also be a director in ONGC. Or the government says, along with being MP or MLA, I'm also giving you a post in a government company. That becomes an office of profit. If you are the legislator, along with that, you cannot hold an executive position. That becomes an office of profit. Now, the problem is that there is no clear definition of office of profit in the constitution. In the Constitution of India, there is no clear definition of office of profit. The Supreme Court has given some definitions. Supreme Court, for example, says if the office was created by the government, if you are getting paid by the government, if the government can remove you from your post, If the government influences your decision making, that becomes an office of profit. But there is no clarity on office of profit so far. That is something that the ARC tried to do here. Basically, what ARC has done as a suggestion, they have tried to clarify, give a proper definition of what do you mean by office of profit. So first, they say that any office or any authority that controls public funds, any authorities that or any authority that controls any non-statutory body, all of that decides the policy will be called as an office of profit. Apart from that, if a minister is a member of certain organizations such as planning commission etc that used to exist earlier, it shall not be treated as an office of profit. Now please understand this. The second point is, if a minister, because he is a minister of a certain authority, minister of a certain ministry, by being a minister of that ministry, he or she is automatically the head of some other organization, that will not be called as office of profit. For example, there are many other committees, many other authorities where ministers are members. If that happens, if a minister automatically becomes a member of some committee, that will not be called as an office of profit. Office of profit will mainly be for this, that if you hold some positions wherein you are deciding government policies, wherein you are controlling the public funds, wherein you are making decisions on behalf of the government, that will be called as an office of profit. Now, as I told you earlier, the government has still not given a proper definition. It is the Supreme Court that has given a proper definition of the office of profit. There are many interesting cases regarding office of profit. There's a Jaya Bachchan case, for example. Jaya Bachchan was a member of the Rajya Sabha. Now, as the member of Rajya Sabha, she is not supposed to take any executive position. So what happened was, when she was a member of Rajya Sabha, at that point of time, the UP government, Uttar Pradesh government, had made their basically they had their own film development board. So Uttar Pradesh government wanted to encourage filmmakers to come to UP and do their shooting in UP. UP is famous for shooting anyway, but shooting of a different kind. So sorry. So the UP government wanted to make sure that the film shooting at least happens in UP. So they made a UP film development board to encourage people to come and do their film shootings, etc. in UP. So what happened was, they asked Jaya Bachchan to become the head of that organization. So Jaya Bachchan was made the chairman of this organization. So a case was filed that Jaya Bachchan is holding an executive position along with being a member of Rajya Sabha. How can she do that? She should be disqualified. That the idea was that she is holding an office of profit. What did she say? Her defense or her argument was that no, I am not holding an office of profit. Why? She said, I'm not taking any salary. She said, I'm taking zero salary. So because I'm not taking any profit, zero salary means no profit. So she said, because I'm not getting any profit out of it, this is not an office of profit. That was her idea. Did the court accept that? No. The Supreme Court did not accept this excuse. The Supreme Court said, not taking a salary does not mean it's not an office of profit. There are two things to understand here. Number one, the court said, if in your place someone else would have been given this post, would they have taken a salary or not? Obviously, yes, they would have taken a salary. Second, can the UP government remove you from your post tomorrow if they want to? Yes, they can remove you. So if these things are happening, that means it is an office of profit. Because the government has appointed you, the government can remove you. That is controlled by the government, so it is an office of profit only. And Jaya Bachchan was disqualified from her membership of the Rajya Sabha. She had to leave her Rajya Sabha post. So office of profit has been a contentious issue in the past because there is no definition of it. The second ARC tried to give a proper definition of the office of profit, although not accepted by the government in any way. They also suggested schemes such as MPLAD, local area development funds, or MLA funds should be disqualified or should be abolished. What exactly is this? Every single year, Member of Parliament gets 5 crore rupees for development projects in their constituency. In your constituency to do the development work like building of roads, etc. Members of Parliament get 5 crore rupees. Now, problem is, in a lot of cases, this is misused. In a lot of cases, misused in the sense that, for example, when the elections happen and every member of parliament or MLA, they know in which area have they gotten most of the votes from and people of which area have not voted for them. They all know this. All this data is available. So when a member of parliament knows that there's a certain area which has not voted for me, what they do is they make sure that their funds are not used for development of that area. So that goes against the common people. Because you did not vote for the member of parliament, the member of parliament will not use the development funds for your area. So there is a kind of biased against the people. And this is my suggestion is that these funds should be abolished. Also, suggestion of the second ARC is MPs and MLAs should be under the RTI Act. Means questions should be asked or should be allowed to be asked for members of parliament and MLAs as well about their work. Any question that the people have should be allowed to be asked under RTI. Have these been accepted? No, these have not been accepted by the government. These are just suggestions. The suggestions have not been accepted by the government of India, but they have suggested these things. Again, as I told you earlier, whatever we are reading in the second ARC, these are suggestions. The government has not accepted most of them, but they are helpful for you to be written in the mains examination, in the mains answer. Give me a couple of minutes. Let me fill up my water bottle. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. We'll continue from here. Yes, Rajneesh, all the funds are given from Consolidated Fund of India only. That is the only source of money that the government has for development. Anyways, the next report that we have is recommendations on public order. Now, when you say public order, what we mean to say is actually the working of the police. Because to maintain public order is a primary responsibility of the police. Now, there are a lot of issues in the working of the police in India. There are many reforms that have been done from time to time. Many other reforms are pending as well. There are many questions also asked about the working of the police in India. This is why this particular report is important. Because whenever you have questions about the working of the police in India, the reforms needed in the police system, you can write about the recommendations given by the second ARC in this report. So, the first important recommendation, separate investigation from other police functions. Now, what do you mean by this? See, the major problem that we have in our police system is you expect the same police officer to investigate a murder case, and then you expect the same police officer to run after criminals, engage in encounter. Because we have seen this in movies, we expect the same police officer to be able to do everything. Because in movies you are shown that police officer who is solving a crime as well, who's running after the criminals as well, but that is not true in reality. In reality, these are very different skill sets. In order to resolve cases, in order to be a detective, there's a very different kind of a training that officers have to undergo. And in order to be someone who catches the criminals, that's a very different skill set. Ideally, these two should be separated. So in most police around the world, most countries around the world, you will see their police systems have two types of officers. One, officers who are detectives, who are trained to resolve a case, who are trained to go to, let's say, the crime scene, collect all the evidence, and then try to resolve that case. The other are people who try and make sure the law and order is in place. They make sure that if someone is running away, they can catch him, they can engage in a gunfight, etc. In India, unfortunately, that is not true. Unfortunately, our police does not have any separation between investigation and maintaining law and order and other functions of the police. The same police might be expected to give protection to a VIP, might be expected to make safety arrangements for a rally of a big politician, and the same policeman would be tomorrow solving a big murder case as well. That should not happen. The idea is there should be separation of investigation from other police functions, because the idea is investigation is a specialist job and you can't really expect that that should be mixed up with something else. Next, we should have a police performance and accountability commission. Now, what do you mean by this? See, the working of the police and most of the government jobs is very tedious in the sense that even if you do a great job, your promotion, etc., is not really dependent on your performance. Your promotion is mainly dependent on the number of years that you have completed in the service. If, for example, you will be promoted or your profile will be promoted after 15 years, then you have to complete 15 years no matter what. In those 15 years, even if you did a great job, you will still be promoted after 15 years only. And similarly, even if you don't do a good job, you will still be promoted with the same time period. So the suggestion is we should have something like a state police performance and accountability commission. What will it do? It's supposed to look into the working of the police. It is supposed to give rewards to those police officers who are doing a great job. It is supposed to give an encouragement to those police officers who are going beyond their duty and doing their job very well, so that they can set example for others. And it is also supposed to kind of, I won't say punish, but kind of set an example out of those who are not doing their job properly. Also, one more thing that they will do is, see, for a common man, police is the first point of contact when you have some problem. You have a law and order problem, something wrong happened in your area, you go to the police. Something wrong happened in your house, you go to the police. Someone did something wrong to you personally, you go to the police. So police is the first point of contact whenever something wrong happens. And this is where we have to understand that the police has to play a very, very important role as the first point of contact. If the police leaves a bad impression in front of the people, which is the case, in most of the cases in India, the reality is most people do not have a positive impression of the police. Most people in India think that police is corrupt. Most people in India think that police is incompetent to resolve cases. That is why there has to be a commission where if the common man wants, they can file a complaint against the police as well. Because the reality right now is, if you go to the police station and they don't file your complaint, or if you go to the police station and they try to pressurize you into doing something that you don't want to, you don't have any other option right now, do you? As a common man, where will you go? You can't go anywhere else, because if you go to some other police station, they will tell you this is not our area, because ultimately you have to go to a police station of your area only. So if that police officer is not listening to you, the area in charge of your area, if he is not listening to you, where will you go? You don't have any other option available. So for common man, in order to feel secured, in order to feel heard for the common man, we should have something like this, a commission where people can come and file a complaint against the police, and this commission should then decide on the basis of the performance about the promotion of the police officers, about the pay that they get. This is again just a suggestion, it has not been accepted. Now these kind of suggestions, especially, it's very difficult for them to be accepted. Why? The reason is, every government wants to control the police. Whenever any party comes to power in the state, they all want to control the police. So they do not want that police is controlled by some other independent authority. All the politicians, all the political parties, no matter which political party they belong to, at the end of the day, want that once they have come to power, they should be the ones who should be controlling the police. And that is why, to get the police accountable or answerable to an independent organization is something that the governments or the political parties would never want. Another suggestion is to reduce the unnecessary burden on the police. You would have seen a lot of times your local politicians, people who people don't even know, those people are those people have four police officers around them, surrounding them. Even the local small time politician, as soon as a politician wins even a smallest of election, as soon as a politician wins even a panchayat or municipality election, that politician says, oh, now I have a threat to my life, I want protection, I want four police officers surrounding me. When these unnecessary requests are accepted, when the police is given unnecessary duty to protect people, those who have no threat related to them, to protect people from, again, don't know what, that puts an unnecessary burden on the police. Whenever there are politician rallies, whenever there are VIP rallies, any important person is visiting, you first go to the police, they have to do all the security arrangements. All that is an unnecessary burden on the police, and it does not leave enough time for the police to actually take up investigations. And that is why the police and the investigation lags in certain cases. That is why there are so many cases that are still pending. Another suggestion: improve the forensic science infrastructure. It is happening gradually, meaning that the crimes that are happening are advancing day by day. You would have seen all these news stories, new types of crimes being committed, people hiding bodies, people cutting off bodies and doing no, can't even say what. To ensure that all these things are solved, to ensure that the police stays one step ahead, we have to give enough facilities and infrastructure to the police. For example, cyber crimes are becoming a reality now, but very few police stations or very few police personnel have been given proper training to handle cyber crimes. I'll give you a real story. It's a few years back story. There was a girl who apparently had a breakup with her boyfriend. Now, After the breakup, this boyfriend was very angry. He wanted to take revenge on the girl. So what he did was he started posting personal and private photos of the girl on Twitter, that is now x.com. So this guy started posting intimate personal photos of the girl on Twitter. Now she was embarrassed. She went to the police and she filed this complaint that this is happening to me. Please do something. Do you know what the police did? The police first asked her, ma'am, what is Twitter? First tell us what is Twitter. We don't know what is Twitter. Only then we can do something. Now imagine a situation where you are being bullied online and something wrong is happening to you online and you go to the police and the first question the police has is what is Twitter or what is Facebook or what is Instagram. If they don't even understand that, how do you expect them to help you in such situation? This is because the police has not been given enough training and you can't blame them. See, the job of the police is very different. It's not like a normal job. I used to, you might also have seen this. I remember when we were kids and we used to celebrate, let's say, Holi. So if today is 27th of June, I remember. So for example, today is 27th of June and today is Holi. Just an example. I remember we used to say Holi of police people is tomorrow. Today is Holi for common people. Holi for police people is tomorrow on 28th June. Have you heard this? As kids, have you heard this? That police Holi is tomorrow. You would have all heard this story. Now, why is it that police stories to, or the police Holi is tomorrow? Because on Holi, they are just looking after everyone else who is drinking and going everywhere. They don't have their own personal life. For them, they have to maintain law and order on the day of the festival so that they can celebrate the festival tomorrow. So the job of the policeman is not easy. Tomorrow, when everyone will just be sleeping, police will be playing their Holi. So again, it's not an easy job. Think about their family members. Think about the family members of the policemen who want to celebrate the Holi on that day, but they can't. So it's not an easy job. If you call the police station at 2 a.m. in the night that something wrong has happened, the police officer cannot say, oh, my job starts at 10 a.m. I'll come at 10 a.m. This is not my duty time. No, they can't say that. So we need to have certain empathy with the police. The police needs to be empathized upon. They are doing a very, very difficult job. There is no timing. And see, you go to work, you go to school, college, and you say some days, oh, my mood is not right. I started the day on a bad note. Think about the police. Police always starts the day on a bad note because no one calls them to share a happy news. Whenever you are talking to a policeman, you don't say, oh, sir, I wanted to share the news that I've scored 95%. So I wanted to share the news with you. No. You only call the police, sir, this has happened. Sir, this has happened. Someone has come, someone is killed, someone is hurt. And that is the only thing that you do with the police. So it's a very difficult job. So yes, they have not been given proper training, but it's also because they have not been given proper time for that. So proper time has to be given, proper compensation has to be given for that. They don't have any fixed hours. They don't really have any personal life that they should. And that is why we have to be empathizing with them or we have to understand their situation. And the suggestion is to improve at least the forensic science infrastructure so that we are in a better situation to help them out and they can hone their skills. Focus on community policing means the police should meet the community members often. Right now, just imagine this. If in your locality, you see a police van or a police people or police station, you would not really feel very good because seeing the police nearby your area is an indication something wrong has happened. That should not be the case. Police should engage with the community. That is called community policing. Engage with the community people, interact with them so that if something wrong happens, people are encouraged or people are open to go to the police. We should have at least 33% women workforce in police. That is also lacking because when they go and arrest criminals who are women, when they go and arrest women, they have this problem. They don't have enough women policemen. That becomes a big problem. and that is why something needs to be done here as well. These are some of the suggestions that have been given on public order. We'll continue with this after the break. Come back at 8:15, and we'll start with local governance recommendations. Thank you. Hi everyone. All right. So moving on to the next report. The next report that the CAG, or that rather the second ARC, talked about was the recommendations for local governance. Now, in Indian polity, I'm sure all of you have read about local governance. When you say local governance, what you mean is panchayats and municipalities. In Indian polity, we read about the panchayats and the municipalities. We read about 73rd, 74th Amendment Act, the issues in these bodies. The primary issue of both these bodies are lack of funds and lack of power. In order to have some of that resolved, there have been some recommendations given by the second ARC. First, reforming the appointment of the state election commission. So just like the center government appoints, or just like election commission of India was appointed at that time without any role of any committee, similarly the state information or state election commissioner was appointed. Right now, even now, state election commissioner is appointed in the same manner. Chief Minister just gives the name to the governor that appoints the state election commission. The state election commission, as you know, is responsible for conducting elections in the panchayats and in the municipalities. Because not a lot of attention is given at this level, most of the attention for the elections specifically is for the parliament elections or for the state legislature elections. We don't really focus on elections at the lower level, which is why there is an issue that even though the state election commission does not work properly in many areas, there is not a lot of attention that goes to it. They have also suggested giving more powers and responsibilities. Now, as you know, how much powers and responsibilities to be given to panchayat, for example, it all depends on the state government. Some states have given more powers and responsibilities as compared to other states. I'll give an example of Kerala. If you go and visit Kerala as a tourist, for example, and you go to far off tourist attractions, there are some beautiful fountains, etc. There are some beautiful waterfalls. There are some caves, etc., that you can go in the hilly areas in Kerala. You will go there, and for example, let's say you park your car, and you will get a parking ticket or a parking slip. When you pay the money, you will see on that parking slip, it is the money is going to the local village, the local village panchayat. So the village panchayats, for example, have been empowered to charge a parking fee, to charge a toll from the visitors, from the tourists. That is how they earn money. This is rare in other states. In other states, it does not happen. So there are some states that have tried to give more power, more responsibilities to their panchayats and municipalities, while some other states have not done that. Kerala is one example that I gave to you. Then the reports of State Finance Commission should be much more detailed. We read about the Finance Commission of India. The Finance Commission of India, as you know, gives a report once in 5 years to the President of India. Finance Commission of India gives a report how much money in the form of taxes collected by the central government should go to the state governments. When the Finance Commission of India gives their report is detailed. When I say detailed, it means that it would actually be about how much money to be given to which state and the reasons behind it. They don't just randomly divide the money. Like, they divide the money or recommend the division of money on the basis of certain parameters such as the population of that state, the income level of that state, how much money does the state have on its own. All these things are considered first. On the basis of all these things, the Finance Commission of India will give a report to the President of India. At the state level, we have the State Finance Commission. State Finance Commission also suggests to the state government how much money to give to different districts in the state. Just like the central government distributes money to the state governments, the state governments distribute some of the money to local panchayats and municipalities. The State Finance Commission will give that report once in 5 years. The problem is the reports of the state finance commission are not that detailed. Means if they say that 50 crore to be given to this panchayat or municipality, it does not have proper reasoning. It does not have proper parameters based on which the decision is taken. And when it is not based on certain parameters or reasoning, it becomes easier for the government to reject that. So the government usually reject those data. Apart from that, the other suggestion that everyone has is give them adequate funds. Now, the point is, anyone can say give them more money, give them more funds, but the problem is lack of overall funds. If you don't have more money coming in from other resources such as taxes, etc., there is a limit to how much money can be given. Center and the state governments, both of them argue that they should be the one who should be giving more money to local governments. The state government wants the center government to give more money. Center government wants the state government to give more money to local government. Adequate funds lacking has been a big, long-standing problem with the local governance in India. Then increase in non-tax revenue is a suggestion. Of what do you mean by this? See, there are two ways in which any government earns the money. One is tax revenue, another is non-tax revenue. Tax revenue, simple and easy to understand. Money that you get from taxes. Most of the government income comes in from this money that comes in from taxes. However, there are some non-tax revenues as well. The idea is that the panchayats, the municipalities, the local governments should be allowed to raise money through non-tax revenue. Now, what are examples of non-tax revenue? Let's say, as I told you earlier, parking fees, toll fees from the local highway, allowing them to collect some fines. Fines, for example, let's say there are fines for not wearing a mask. There were fines for not wearing a mask earlier. Fine for spitting in the open, fine for smoking in the open. That money coming in from these kind of things, it comes under the category of non-tax revenue. Means the money that you are actually getting without the taxes being collected. This can reduce the pressure on the government as well. Because if the government knows that we don't have to give all the money to panchayats and municipalities, they can sustain on their own. That is when it actually becomes better and more suitable for the panchayats and the municipalities to actually go ahead and sustain themselves. Other suggestion, allow them borrowing within permissible limits. So panchayats are not allowed to borrow, municipalities in some cases are. There have been some cases of municipal bonds being issued. So some municipalities have issued municipal bonds. But the problem is, see, when any authority issues bonds in the market, the bonds will only be sold or people will buy that if they have a backing. See, if I am buying a bond of a panchayat or a municipality, I should be given an assurance that if this body can't pay the money back, then the central government will pay the money back or the state government will pay the money back. The reason why the government securities at the central level are sold easily is that the government of India's consolidated fund is the backup of these government securities. You know that if I buy government securities tomorrow, if the government is not able to pay back the money, it is guaranteed by the consolidated fund of India, so I will get my money. But with the panchayats and municipalities, with the local government, there is no such fund to have a backing if they release a bond. So yes, they should be allowed to borrow, they should be allowed to circulate bonds in the market, but most importantly, the bond should be backed up by either the state government or the center government in order for that to be successful. Next important report, recommendation on capacity building for conflict resolution. Basically, this report is about the internal conflicts that we have in India. The biggest internal conflict that we have had in India internally is Naxalism. Naxalism, Northeast insurgency, that has always been a problem in India. Now, the one good thing that you have to understand in India, in our democracy, is even when the governments change in India, even when we have new governments coming in, even if we have new parties coming in, mostly you will see continuity remain in Indian policies. So, if, for example, a government starts a big initiative, it is very rare that a new government will completely remove that. They might rename that, they might give it a new name, they might make a few changes, but very, very rarely would you see random policies being changed. I'll give you so many examples. Manrega, uh, right to food, the food distribution, all these programs that are running today were programs that were started by the Congress government. But the BJP government has continued it. They have made certain changes. Even the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that Prime Minister holds so dear to him was something that was started by the Congress government as a Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan. So in India, the good part is policies usually continue. So one thing that has happened in India since our history or since our independence rather is whenever there is an internal conflict, let's say Naxalism issue or issue in the Northeast, every government has followed similar policies. And that policy is to give negotiation a priority. Whenever there have been any new groups, insurgent groups that have come up, any groups that have attacked the government forces, rather than attacking them in return immediately, the government almost always, every government gives priority to the negotiation part. They negotiate, and what has happened as a result is in the Northeast, especially, a lot of insurgent groups in the past, many of them have joined mainstream politics. Many of their leaders, in fact, have become chief ministers as well. If you look at the chief ministers in the northeastern states, many of them earlier used to belong to different groups that were insurgent groups that used to fight against our security forces. But many of them, through negotiations, through consultations, decided to join mainstream politics and decided that it is better for them to now work with the government. So, this is something that has been done often. Negotiations are given priority. Another suggestion is to give more protection to senior functionaries. In the Naxal area, especially, you will see Naxals target government officials. They try and kidnap that. There have been instances of ministers being killed. There have been instances of district magistrate DMs being kidnapped. Because for Naxals, the higher ranked government official that they can harm, the better it is for their image. So that they can tell the world that, see, we are so powerful. They can send a message that even the government can't stop us. So for the Naxals, targeting higher level government officials is a part of their strategy. And thus, we need to protect the higher functionaries and also increase the capacity of the security forces. Have or allow them better weapons, give them better technology, give them better anything that they require, more funds, more training capacity, etc., to fight against these forces. Sensitize the police, make sure that the police is an understanding of the issue. See, the Naxal issue is a pretty complex issue to solve. You can't just go out and say, no, I'll solve the issue. There are issues on both the sides. There have been some wrong done by the Naxals. There have been some wrong done by the authorities as well. That is why you have to ensure that the police, paramilitary, all of these are sensitive to the issue. They can't just go out and say, I'll attack someone and I'll get this issue sorted. There can be formation of trained security forces. Now, please understand, amongst the states that have seen Naxal problem in India, the one state that has been successful in curtailing that problem is Andhra Pradesh. And a lot of credit goes to the new special force that they formed called the Greyhounds. Greyhound, this is the logo of Greyhounds. Now, what exactly is Greyhounds? Greyhounds is a special team of officers, special team of security personnel formed by the Andhra Pradesh government, especially to fight against the Naxals. Now, understand this issue. One of the big problems that the Naxals or that the security forces have while fighting against the Naxals is that Naxals live in forest areas. They are very familiar and they can hide in the forest very easily. They know every way within the forest, they know where to hide, they know where to run, they know where to go, where not to go. When the security forces try and attack the Naxals, when the security forces try to run after them, the Naxals go and hide in the forest. And the security forces, since they are not from that area, they don't know how to counter that. This is where the greyhounds come into the picture. So, a new strategy that was deployed by Andhra Pradesh was, why not employ people in the forces from that tribal community itself? Why not go to the local community and tell them that if you want to remove Naxalism, why don't you join the security forces with the government? We will give you a government job, we will give you a good salary. You help us take out the Naxals, and we will help you make your life better. That is how the Greyhound was formed. So Greyhound, the speciality is that it has officers or it has people from the local tribal population who are well versed with the forest. And that is how they were extremely powerful, or extremely helpful rather, in resolving this issue. Many other states have also now started to do the same. Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, wherever we have this problem of Naxalism, West Bengal also, we have seen that the state governments are now trying to recruit the local people to join the security forces, trying to encourage them, attract them towards a government job, saying that your life will become better. You should come to this side. But as I said, the only state that has done it successfully so far is Andhra Pradesh. Other states are trying, and let's see if they're able to actually do this or not. We also, and the suggestion also is to establish and strengthen local level police stations. In a lot of cases, we have seen Naxals attacking police stations for two reasons. First, to send a message to the population that even the police is not secure from us, so you should not trust the police. And second is to capture all the arms and weapons that the police stations have. Another suggestion is to implement forest laws or the Forest Rights Act properly. Now, understand this. We are not going into Naxalism in detail. That's in your internal security syllabus. You'll read it there. One of the big issues why Naxalism exists, or why people join Naxal areas or Naxal activities, is government laws have been ineffective. Let's try and understand this problem. Tribal population has been living in the forest for a very long time. Now, with the expansion of industries, with heavy population and the government requiring infrastructure to be built, a lot of these tribals are being removed from their forest area, and the land of the tribals is being taken away. The problem is, while the government has laws in place to stop the land from being taken away, from being snatched away from the tribals, those laws are ineffective. There's a lot of corruption at the local level, and the biggest reason why a lot of tribal population supports Naxal leaders is because their land has been taken away, and they hold the government and the government authorities responsible for that. They think that the government did not safeguard their land, rather the land was given to the corporates, to the private players, and that is why they protest. So the idea is, or the suggestion here is, the government should ensure there is proper implementation of these laws. We have the Forest Right Act of 2006 that allows ownership of land to the tribals. That should be implemented properly. Break the nexus between illegal mining and forest contractors. Understand this idea. How do Naxals get money? In order to have operations, in order to ensure that they are fighting against the government forces, the Naxals need weapons. From where do they get the money? If you look at the sources of money, sources of income for the Naxals, you will have to understand something. Naxalism is mostly spread across the mineral belt of India. When you say the mineral belt of India, you mean Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. The Naxals have intentionally captured or intentionally hide in the mineral belt of India. Why? Because what they do is they illegally extract mineral resources. They illegally take out minerals from the mines and then they sell it in the market to make sure that they earn the money. This selling of minerals to ensure that they earn the money is actually the biggest source of revenue for the Naxals. So the idea is, if the government wants to stop this from happening, the government has to break the nexus between illegal mining and the forest contractors. Apart from that, the government should also take help of special agencies such as BRO. BRO is Border Road Organization. One of the government agencies that deserves a lot of credit in India but has not been given that much credit is the BRO, Border Road Organization. It is the organization that is responsible for building roads in the border areas, maintaining them. They are the ones, wherever, for example, there is a landslide in high mountainous areas near the border, they are the ones who look into it. If you, let's say, take a bike trip to Ladakh and the highway is closed due to snowfall, they are the ones who go and clear the snowfall. The idea is that they should be used in Naxal areas as well. See, one of the issues in Naxal areas is lack of infrastructure, lack of proper roads, lack of facilities. Because whenever any contractor goes to try and build a road, they are attacked by the Naxals. So the government has this problem of lack of infrastructure because the local Naxals don't allow the outside contractors to come in. This is where organizations, agencies such as the BRO, Border Road Organization, can be extremely helpful. The Border Road Organization can be used in the place of contractors to make sure that they do a better job, to make sure that they are able to build the infrastructure that is required in this area. These were the recommendations for local governance, and after that, the conflict resolution part. Next is the report on water related issues. India is a water stressed country. With our population increasing even now, the need for water will become even higher. And thus, when the need for water becomes higher, we also have the water related disputes in India. We already have multiple water related disputes between different states in India. Look at the famous Kaveri dispute. Look at what is happening in Delhi, the issue of water, the Satluj Yamuna Canal issue between Punjab and Haryana. There are a lot of water related issues that we have between different states. Again, the issue is lack of fresh water and increasing demand. So there have been certain suggestions given. First, we should be more proactive in resolving interstate water dispute. There are multiple rivers in India that go from one state to the other state, and whenever that happens, there is always a dispute between different states who should get how much water. Usually, what happens, a tribunal is formed, the situation becomes bad, the process is elongated. So, the idea is, why not be proactive, look into all the interstate rivers, make a list of rivers that go from one state to the other state, and try and resolve the matter beforehand. Second idea, follow the spirit of Article 262. What is Article 262, by the way? Any idea? What is Article 262? Any idea? Okay. 262 is about Interstate Water Tribunal. Article 262 says that whenever two or more states have a river related dispute or a water related dispute, that will not be solved by the Supreme Court of India. Water related dispute between the two states is one of the very rare things in India that is not resolved by the Supreme Court. For this to be resolved, a tribunal has to be formed. Now, the Article 262, remember, now understand this carefully. Article 262 says decision given by interstate water tribunal cannot be challenged in any court, including the Supreme Court of India. Please understand this. I'm repeating it once again. Article 262 says any decision given by the interstate water tribunal cannot be challenged in any court in India, even not in the Supreme Court of India. However, just like everything else, in this article also there are loopholes. Loopholes because of which people can still go to the Supreme Court and elongate this process. I'll give you a real example. There is a big Kaveri water dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. It's a very old dispute going on for many years. Tamil Nadu wants more water, Karnataka does not want to give a lot of water. Now, Kaveri Water Tribunal was appointed. It gave a decision after many years. When it gave the decision, Karnataka was not happy. Karnataka thought that a lot more water is being given to Tamil Nadu. We will not accept that. Now, they don't have any other option. You can't appeal in the Supreme Court. So, what did they do? They found out two loopholes. Number one, they still went to the Supreme Court arguing that less water than required is a violation of their right to life. That is Article 21. So they went to Supreme Court saying that decision of the tribunal is against my fundamental right. Against my fundamental right, it is violating my right to life, and that is why I am coming to the court. Because the Supreme Court has a responsibility. They can't deny any matter from hearing which involve the fundamental right issue. Fundamental right cases are heard by the Supreme Court. So this is one big loophole that people still go to the Supreme Court saying it is against my right to life. Second is not really a loophole. Second was when Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Jayalalitha, late Jayalalitha, she went to the Supreme Court. The reason for her going to Supreme Court was that Karnataka is not implementing the tribunal decision. So she did not go to change the decision. She went to Supreme Court to get the decision implemented. So the point here is, despite the Constitution clearly saying that the award of the tribunal cannot be challenged even in the Supreme Court, even after that, there are issues that go to Supreme Court. These are the loopholes. This is what is suggested, that this should not happen. The second ARC says spirit of Article 262 should be followed. When we say spirit should be followed, means whatever is written should be followed. If it says that challenge should not be done to the Supreme Court, that should be the case. We cannot challenge the Supreme Court by finding loopholes. That should not be done. Next, river basin organization should be set up for each interstate river. As I told you earlier, every river that goes from one state to the other state should resolve the dispute before it becomes big. For that, every river should have an organization called the River Basin Organization, so that they are able to resolve issues of water distribution between the different states. We should also have a national water law, which we do not have. National water law, basically, because the law has not been made, so there is no clarity on that. But the second ARC says that we should have a proper law about the usage of water, water-related disputes, etc., that have come in, how to resolve these disputes. All of that should be in the national water law. These are some of the recommendations in water-related disputes. The next report, which is specifically related to all of you, is the report on refurbishing personal administration. This is the report that specifically concerns those who are preparing for the civil services. Why? In this report, the second ARC suggested how to improve the pattern of government examinations in India. What changes can be made to exams such as the UPSC? Most of the recommendations here have not been accepted. Most of the recommendations here are not accepted, but let's see, some of these are very interesting recommendations. First recommendation: establish national institutes of public administration. Now, what do you mean by this? Right now, if let's say you are in class 12th, and in class 12th itself, you know that you want to prepare for the UPSC examination. But for the UPSC exam, you have to be a graduate. So, what do? You join any random college where you don't have to study much so that you can give more time to UPSC preparation, right? That is what you do. That is what logically happens, that you try and see you can join any college wherever you don't have to study much so that you can basically give your time to UPSC preparation. The suggestion here is, why not have something called National Institute of Public Administration? After class 12, student can join these institutes where they will be taught the same things as a UPSC aspirant has to learn: history, geography, polity, economics, science, etc. Why not have these kind of institutes where you are taught the same thing for 3 years? At the end of 3 years, you are prepared for the exam also, and you have a bachelor degree also. After that, you can give the exam if you want. And if you don't want to give the exam, no worries, you have the degree, go and do something else. That is the idea. That why not have these institutes, so that rather than you wasting your time and fees on a course in a college where you have randomly joined just because you wanted a graduate degree, why not have proper colleges which will teach you this only, that you have to study for the UPSC examination? So that is the first suggestion, to have these institutes. This has not been done so far, because again, the counter argument to this is, why this may not be successful is, this degree that you will get will not be very helpful if you don't clear the UPSC exam, right? God forbid, if you do not clear the UPSC exam after this college, what will you do with this degree that has taught you all these things? Because it will not really be helpful later on. Either you are taught one thing in so much detail that you become a teacher or you become a university professor, but apart from that, this will not be very helpful. That is why many people don't support this. Second, the second suggestion that they have is, the age limit and number of attempts should not be very high. The suggestion that second ARC has given, for general category, the age limit should be only 25 years and 3 attempts should be allowed. For OBC, 28 years should be the final age and 5 attempts should be allowed. For SC, ST physically handicapped, 29 should be the maximum age and 6 attempts should be allowed. That is what they have suggested. Will the government accept this or not? I don't know. But usually what happens is, from the government's point of view, increasing the age is easier. They can increase the age because it's fine, people will adjust to it. But decreasing the age limit for the government will be very difficult, because lakhs of people are preparing for the exam. You cannot randomly change this in the middle. To be true, personally, I like this suggestion. Personally, I do not think someone should be investing more than 3-4 years in this examination. I think if you have to clear the exam, 2 to 3 years maximum should be the time that you give to it. If you are not able to clear, then you are made for something else, and you should try your hand and your talent at something else. But again, it's a personal choice. This is what the UPSC has suggested. Again, this is a suggestion. Akshata Vache, this is a suggestion. This is not a reality. Please don't worry. This is not the age limit. Age limit is 32 for general and 35 for OBC. So don't worry about that. This is a suggestion that the second ARC has given. This has obviously not been accepted so far. Another suggestion: the structure of the exam can be changed. So right now, what happens in UPSC exam is it's a very, very, very long cycle. Let's try and understand this. So you give the prelims in May, then for example in September you give the mains exam, then after September, let's say December, Jan, you give your interviews, and then the result maybe let's say comes in from March. Yes, Sonia, I agree. So basically, if you see from prelims to results, it's almost a 10-month cycle. That's a very, very, very long cycle. Why? Let's assume you started preparing for prelims, you went till the interview, and God forbid, let's say you did not get the final result. You have to repeat the same entire cycle once again. So you have to basically again go through the entire cycle, start from the prelims exam. So it wastes almost an entire year. That is a big problem. That when you have the entire cycle of 1 year wasted, you start from fresh, that takes a lot of time. So the suggestion is, again, you might not like it. The suggestion is have the prelims and mains exam together. Why? See, except optional paper and ethics, most of the syllabus is the same for prelims and mains. The things that you study for prelim, you also study for mains exam. So the suggestion is something like this. Understand this. Let's say May first week you have the prelims, and why not, let's say in the second week of May have the mains exam. That's the suggestion. And then have your interviews in, let's say, September. After 3 months, have the interviews, and then give the final result maybe by December. So what you will do is you will cut short the cycle to 6 months if you try have prelims and mains together. Now, obviously, you can't allow everyone to write the mains exam because you will not have so many people to check the copies. So what can happen if you have to implement this? You have to make the prelims online, because when you make the prelims online, what happens is immediately you can release the result. When you have an examination online, immediately right after the exam you can tell what is the score of people and what is the cutoff, as simple as that. So if you have the prelims exam online, what will happen is you would be able to have the prelims or the mains exam right after the prelims after 1 week or 10 days maximum. That will cut short the cycle significantly. That is a suggestion. Now, I do not think that will happen because see, UPSC is such an exam where any drastic changes do not really happen all of a sudden. So you don't expect any drastic changes, etc., to happen here. But this is right now the structure of the examination, and this is the suggestion that they have, that you should change the structure. They also suggested that there should be a proper provision to transition from state civil service to IAS after 8 to 10 years. Right now, the rule is if you join as a state PCS officer, let's say you gave the West Bengal PCS exam and you clear this exam and you join the West Bengal PCS as an officer. The current rule is after 10 years of service, you can be promoted to IAS. You can be promoted to IAS. Now, again, this promotion of IAS happens after an interview. The UPSC will conduct an interview and then they will promote you to IAS. Not everyone, they choose some people. However, this is not implemented properly. Why? See, the point here is, understand this, the IAS lobby, the IAS group of officers is very, very strong, and they don't like any outsiders coming in. For the IAS lobby, the IAS group, they are the elite class. They don't want outsiders from the state services, becoming IAS officers. So they try to ensure that this process is not very smooth, because of which we see a lot of PCS officers approaching the court. Many PCS officers have approached the High Court, the Supreme Court also, saying that they have not been given a chance to interview with the UPSC to go and be promoted to the IAS level. So although we do have this rule in place, but it is not implemented properly. A lot of loopholes have been found. The UPSC does not conduct interview. The IAS lobby usually tries to stop it, and that is why the suggestion is that this transition from state civil service to the IAS should happen properly. There should be proper provisions in place for this to happen. Just a second. Yeah. The next report is about disaster management. Now, India, unfortunately, is very common, or we commonly see many disasters, floods, cyclones. We have even seen tsunamis in the past. How to improve that preparation? Number one, suggestion is we should have proper categories of disaster. What is a local disaster? What is a state disaster? What is a national disaster? Why? Right now, whenever something wrong happens, we usually call the National Disaster Management Authority to bring their forces. We call the army to help, but that should not happen in every single disaster. At the local level, if there's a local disaster, local administration should look into it. Only if there's a national disaster, we should have these forces. That is the entire idea. Second, at least 1% of population should be trained in civil defense. Civil defense basically means giving you at least basic training of, let's say, first aid, how to help people in these situations, how to make sure that you actually can help people who are stuck somewhere, how to lift someone if someone is not able to walk, how to help them, how to rescue them. So at least 1% of the population should be given this training. Medical training should be given to police, firemen, home guards, etc. So that if they're in this situation where someone requires first aid, how can they help them out? And crisis management should be a part of our education system. Unfortunately, this is not true. This does not happen in India. In other countries around the world, for example, let's say Japan. Now, Japan is a country where earthquakes are very, very, very common. So in their school curriculum, students are taught how to respond in earthquake. Students are taught what to do when an earthquake hits, how to respond, who to call, who not to call. In India, despite India's history of seeing so many disasters, we do not have disaster management as a part of our mainstream education. And that is a suggestion that we should be much more prepared with the disasters. We do have certain warning systems in place. For example, for cyclones, for tsunami, the government of India does have these systems where we can send warning messages that has been put in place. For example, fishermen, whoever are registered with the government, they get a message whenever there is a bad weather that they should not go out for fishing, whenever there are high tides that are expected, whenever there is tsunami conditions that are expected. They do send these warning messages. Warning messages are sent to people living near the coastline when a cyclone is about to hit. So that is a suggestion that it should be made even stronger, although we already have these early warning systems in place. We will end our class here. We have a few more reports of the second ARC remaining. We'll discuss those tomorrow. Do join me tomorrow at 6 a.m. for the next session. The SME is still here to answer your questions. You can ask those questions and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Till then, thank you so much for coming here. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.